Welcome to BAM It with John, Michael, and Mari, covering all things business, accounting, marketing, management, and IT. The place where businesses and entrepreneurs find the forest through the trees.
Hello and welcome to BAM It. I am John Michael Cletus with Peridot Consulting, and we have my very good friend and cohort.
Mari Peterson with Marketing Outpost.
And sidekick and co-host and whatever else I can come up with.
Evil minion.
She's the evil minion that secretly controls everything behind the scenes, I think. Anyways, as always, we're with Peridot Consulting and Marketing Outpost. And today we're going to be talking with Kristy Kay of Express Employment Professionals about everything she does. But before we get into that, you want to do some interesting facts, Mari? You want me to share some facts with you? All right. So did you know that 71% of employees in America are in the private service industry now?
Qualify that. What is private service industry?
Well, just non-farm type of, working thing. 3 in 10 of working Americans are self-employed. And
underpaid and overworked. Wait, you didn't ask me that part.
And millennials are the largest generation making up the workforce right now.
So sad. Oh, no, that's good.
Are you showing some bias towards millennials right now?
No.
Anyways,
don't show bias towards millennials. You have to remember we raised them.
Don't look at me. I'm not showing bias.
I actually say there's two types of millennials. I call them the hustling millennial that really goes and gets it done, and there's actually that kind, and then there's the other kind, and they can belong in the same family because I've seen that too. And there's the other kind that really is very chill and maybe not as motivated. Did you know that in Miami, the average length of time now that a person stays at home after, getting past teenage years, do you know what that is now?
In Miami?
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping less than a week if it's in Miami.
They never leave.
5 years.
Wow, jeez.
So I extrapolated that to mean that it's probably an average of 3 to 5 throughout the country.
Some of the most impressive go-getter stories I've heard, to be frank, have been from millennials.
And I agree with that. And what people don't realize is it's not in the typical industries before that we have seen that kind of, I think, career-minded individual. We've been very traditional thinking, with jobs, and they're very non-traditional, and they really do create and invent
their own
different ways and different things. And I think that's what we're not really factoring into when we talk about millennials. So I was not bashing millennials. I was just saying there is a lot. There is a lot of blowback, I will say.
I've seen some of the most impressive stories of go-getters from millennials creating their own jobs in many ways, and I've never seen that. Anyways, as you can see, Kristy, Maury and I like to Banter, thank you. But anyways, let's let Kristy introduce herself so she can stop staring at us with her jaw wide open.
No, I'm Kristy Kay. I'm with Express Employment Professionals with the goal of putting 1 million people to work. We have been in Asheville since 1997, but the current owners have owned it since 2007. Meredith Campbell and Gary Gallagher, father-daughter team. So we're technically a franchise. But luckily, Express gives us the opportunity to be able to do everything that we do based off of our market. So our pricing is based off of our market. Our niche in regards to who we particularly staff for is based off of our market. And we have the backing of a corporation. So it kind of helps out in regards to what we do and how we do it.
So what is it you do and how do you do it?
The best way I've described us is almost like a dating website.
Ooh.
Yes. So I have the opportunity in my role as business development guru, if you will. I go and meet businesses here in Western Carolina, get to know who they are as a business, what their goals are, their culture, who they're looking for. And then at the same time that I'm doing that, my inside team is getting to know associates. The exact same things. What they want out of a career, what they want as far as pay rate, whether they're part-time or full-time. And with those, we get together between my inside team and myself, and we try to marry those as far as your quote unquote, almost like a dating website to get the perfect candidate.
So would you be what I guess stereotypically speaking from your industry be like a headhunting firm maybe? Or
that's part of it. So you have multiple different agencies within Asheville. So right now there are probably 25 different staffing agencies in Asheville.
Oh, wow.
Some of them are direct hires, so that means that they only do the headhunting aspect. They're going to find an individual that is high caliber CEOs, CFOs, building construction people who are making over $100,000 a year. And that's their total target. Then you have those that are only temporary. And all they do is find people to do temp jobs for a small period of time. And then you have Express. We are all over the board. So we have the temps that are for your maternity leave, vacation time, project work, data entry. Then we have your temp to hire, which allows almost like a try it before you buy it. And then we do have the direct hire.
So when you do I'm just getting honed in on temps because you talked about data entry. When you talk about temps and what they do, when generally or do you find that people need temps and what are some times that is a good fit?
It depends on what your business is. Uh-huh. So we have some businesses that are growing too fast and their inside team can't keep up. So they'll ask us to be able to send someone to do simple data entry, make fax, send faxes, make copies, transfer their record information from paperwork to only computer. So it's all digital. You've got your maternity leave. Someone's leaving for maternity leave and they need someone to still be able to answer the phones. So what our job is to be able to go into a business and mirror what they do and what they need.
One thing that I'm kind of seeing there is that's nice, and you tell me if this is correct or not, but so if I, for example, were to hire a temp or somebody through you, and you mentioned earlier the try it before you buy it, I pay you, right, or your firm, I don't pay them. Is that
correct?
Yeah.
So we're almost like a vendor. At that point, we take all of the risk in regards to workers' comp, unemployment, SUTA, FICA, any other taxes and initials that you can possibly imagine. And we are staffing and paying, doing the payroll for that individual. So it gives the company resources to be able to help develop what they're doing without investing and putting someone directly on their payroll is the best way to be able to explain it.
I mean, I think that's great because it's in many ways, some people may want to hire, but they just don't have that HR infrastructure or that payroll infrastructure. We did the previous podcast. We just talked about payroll taxes and how, they're a PITA. I defined PITA in the previous podcast. And in some ways, if you're thinking about hiring for the try it before you buy it situation, or if you just really need help with a project or something, it sounds like in many ways you're a great fit. So what kind of, when you do that matchmaking, like you said, like you're a dating site, what kind of screening do you guys do and how do you know if they're a good fit?
Oh gosh. The one thing that I always tell clients is it is imperative that if you partner with a staffing agency, that they are vetting their people properly. And you should always be able to ask any agency that you work with, what is your vetting process? So before you even have someone come in to be able to meet with you or to help you out, we have already done a phone screening, a face-to-face interview, as well as 2 professional reference checks. That gives us the opportunity to be able to know the individual. Listen, Asheville's a small town and we're technically family owned and operated, even though we're a franchise, and you put your name on every single person that you put out in the community. There are people that we will interview, and it's not that you don't want to hire every single person, but putting your name on someone, you're vetting and making sure that as they go out into the community that they're doing what they need to do to be able to reflect on you. But people are the most unpredictable product in the world. So sometimes you hit a home run and sometimes you fall on your face.
Well, I think it's great that you're doing that. And obviously that's your service, and that's great, because if I was somebody that needed the help, I wouldn't know how to interview. And frankly, I would probably break the law in an interview and not know it. And you could probably share some tidbits on that. But it's great because then you're doing that interview, you're doing the vetting, you're doing that placement. But not only, and I'll ask you that question, like what are, interviewing no-nos, I guess. But beyond that, not only do you vet the potential employees, what is your vetting for the employers?
Oh, it's very intense in my perspective. So not one of our associates goes anywhere that I have not physically been. The reason for that is to make sure, even if you have someone there for just 4 hours, that it's a good fit and that nobody wants to pull their hair out. Nobody wants to just walk off site. But it's also for safety purposes. We are insured just like any other company, and we want to make sure that where we put our people, that it is safe, that they're not walking into something that could be potentially dangerous. So as I go in the vetting process for clients, it's conversations on pay rates and conversations on if they are a little bit lower of a pay rate compared to what a lot of the norm is, we ask them to give us reasons of why we should become an advocate for them. And there are some businesses that really take care of their people, but they just financially cannot get to that $15, $18, $20 an hour for somebody to be able to answer the phone. And we try to become an advocate for the client as well as the associate. So I'm looking at what it looks like, what their culture is like, what they should and shouldn't be doing. And some clients, we have to kindly step back and say, listen, until you can fix A, B, and C, we can't help. Wow. So it's you don't just take every single client, just like you just don't take every single associate.
Mm-hmm. So you do that matchmaking. If I was an employer and came to you and said, I need somebody, I'll pay them $15 an hour, they have to speak Spanish or whatever, then you either have that Rolodex or you can go out and actively do those job searches for them. That's also
correct.
Yeah.
So right now we're setting up about 20 to 25 different interviews a week. Out of that, you may have 15 to 18 show up. Out of that, we may actually hire 10 to 12 based off of the vetting. And then we're putting those individuals to work right now between 24 and 48 hours. So a lot of the times when someone comes to you and they're looking for a paralegal that knows social work, you'll have to be able to go out and be able to find that person and recruit them. Luckily, we have the normal recruiting aspects of Indeed, Career Builder, whatever it may be in regards to that. But then we also have some proprietary ones that we're using.
Okay, so I'm going to get into some questions here that we ask a lot of our relative interviewees, I guess. So how did you get into what you're doing? How did you get into it?
I actually went and asked them to help me find a job. As strange as it may seem, I was working for a bank and banking was just not my forte. I went in and said, hey, can you help me find a job? And they said, would you like to work for us? And I absolutely. And I've loved it ever since. The opportunity to be able to help clients do what they do best, and the opportunity to be able to help keep food on the table of our associates and help them keep their lights on. I mean, you're helping the community in everything that you do.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. So that, I guess that leads into, that's probably like the best part of what you do.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I will say the best part of what I do is getting to see the businesses that are in Asheville.
Oh, wow.
People would be blown away by what people do in Asheville. It is, as the old saying goes, when you move to Asheville, you have to come to Asheville with your own job. Mm-hmm. And it is very true. I probably see 6 new businesses a week minimum.
Oh my goodness.
And that is just because of turnover or people moving into the area, or maybe I've never even come across them before. But Asheville is continually growing, and there are businesses that are moving into this area that do everything from making chocolate to making Girl Scout badges to the red thread for baseball.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've heard of like just some random things that this town has. And to your point, it's really cool, some of the random stuff that we offer. Well, anyways, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll ask you about some challenges in your industry.
This podcast is brought to you by Peridot Consulting and Marketing Outpost. Peridot Consulting offers a new paradigm in accounting services. We work with individuals and businesses toward prosperity and financial happiness. Please visit www.peridotconsultinginc.com for more information. Marketing Outpost provides strategies to solve problems and strategies to grow your business. Please visit www.marketingoutpost.com for more information.
So during the break, you were mentioning to me about how it's a good opportunity for employers to kind of dip their feet in. And what do you mean by that?
A lot of smaller businesses in this area begin to grow, and they don't have employees, and they're not sure of how to onboard someone, what hiring really looks like, what it means to have an employee. And so we will have businesses that call us to quote unquote dip their toes in the water to be able to get that experience. And sometimes they realize, hey, we just need someone part-time, a few days a week. And they go, oh my gosh, we actually have more work and we can need a full-time person. So it allows a business to be able to see where they're at in regards to staffing and if they really truly need someone or if it's not time yet without being 100% committed to that individual. And I always tell clients, listen, if it doesn't work out for you, I understand that you have a big heart, but for every job that you don't have, I've got 40 different ones that maybe this person would be perfect for.
Yeah, so that's great. And they won't feel bad because they're not quote unquote firing the person. And I can see if you want to hire somebody, but you're like, I got stuff they can do, but I don't know if they're going to be busy the whole time. Maybe they will, maybe they're not. So I can see that being a great opportunity from your service.
So you mentioned earlier, you said you get to see a lot of the businesses in Asheville. So what are you seeing in terms, I know we do have a lot of listeners that are Asheville based. So what are you seeing in terms of, I guess, available jobs and then available staffing?
I think that most people that live in Asheville think our largest industry is hospitality, and that is not true. Our largest industry is manufacturing. That is where the majority of people are working and what they're doing. I see jobs, gosh, Mari, from line cooks all the way up to CFOs. And there's not one particular business that I would say that really sticks out to me because we are at the lowest unemployment rate that we've ever been. And so every business is looking for someone. There's quite a few manufacturing jobs. If someone says that they can't find a job, they're not looking, is what I'm trying to say. The hard part is Asheville as a whole pays 6% less than what the national average is. So when someone says they can't find a job, it's they can't find a job that allows them to be able to support their life. And it doesn't even have to be an extravagant life. It's just $12 an hour doesn't cut it anymore.
Right.
So to go all the way around the circle, the best way to be able to answer your question is I see paralegals, accounting, reception, clinical, labor, warehouse, restaurants, anything and everything that you can imagine in between.
So that's a challenge then, I guess, since we do have so many restaurants. What is the optimal starting range for, I know it depends on the job and so forth, but what are you seeing? You say we pay 6% less.
We do as a whole, we pay 6% less than what the national average is, but we cost to live here
a lot more.
Yeah. And the hard part is, and we've talked about it before, that businesses that have been around for 20, 30, 40 years have never raised their rates, which means they can't really go back and pay the associates any more than what they already are. So a lot of times when I go into businesses, we're encouraging them to increase what they're charging in order to be able to help accommodate what they're paying. Right now, the state is saying that living wage is $13.75 for companies that do not offer insurance. and it is $12.50 for businesses that are offering insurance. We are asking businesses for entry level, no experience, to at least start out at $13 an hour. That's we're kind of trying to get in the middle. 13 is the new 10. And the hard part is $10 since 2008 for the last decade has been where most businesses want to start. That's not where pay rates are anymore. And even at 13, it's still hard to live, but 13 is where we're saying, hey, if you're starting, this is where we need you to start.
And what is the minimum wage right now? Is it still 7 something?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say is the biggest mistake that employers make when they start looking to fill jobs?
I think specific to Asheville, it's that they are relying too heavily on word of mouth as opposed to taking a look at resumes. But the problem is we kind of have a black hole when it comes to resumes. Someone will post a job online for, and I know I keep going back to a paralegal, but it just kind of keeps coming to my mind. Someone will post a job for a paralegal, and you'll have someone that has absolutely no experience apply for that job, and you get 150 resumes, and it becomes extremely overwhelming. My statement and what I see companies make mistakes on are, one, they want lifers, and that's just not the way that society is set up anymore. And two, they kind of just want someone to be recommended to them or fall in their lap instead of taking the time to be able to get to know individuals.
Yeah, something I'll get is people will be like, hey, just so you know, we're going to be hiring for X, Y, and Z position. Just let me know if you know anybody. They put the feelers out to their friends and stuff, especially in this town, like you said, it's seemingly first. And if I were to come out and be like, yeah, my sister-in-law would be great for that because she's looking for a job, and she might not be the best fit. So to your point, that's maybe not, it's a good place to go, obviously, because you trust them. I guess a lot of people trust is number one. But
So we were talking about that earlier before we started this. And so now it kind of comes back to what are employees doing that, if they really want a good job, what would you advise them to do?
Quit job hopping. Everything is cyclical. And although I know there are rumors about what the economy is going to do, I don't think that we're going to bust anytime soon. I think that the economy is going too strong. We have taken a survey with multiple different businesses, and no one is expecting another 2008. But what's happening is that associates are job hopping way too much for a quarter here or a quarter there and not really investing in a business. And, we were kind of talking about millennials earlier. Everything is self-gratification. And if you start a job for a lot of the younger generation and they don't see that they're making an immediate impact, they don't feel that they're worthy at a job. And my statement is always, love takes a long time to be able to cultivate, and so does your career. And to be able to get to know you as an employee, you need to invest a little bit more time into a company. I'm not talking 20 years, but at least give a business 5 years.
Right. And I'm seeing that where because of the job hopping, employers are getting it's harder for them to hire people because now they're becoming like, oh, I don't know if I invest all this time and energy and training into somebody, are they really going to stick around, or are they just going to leave after a year?
Correct. And there's a lot of fear in that, but I'll flip it and say, again, Asheville has some long-standing businesses, and some of those long-standing businesses have associates that have been with them for 30 years. They have more information in their brain than they do on paper. And when that person retires, that business hurts. They hurt for a long time because the person that's taking that place doesn't have 30 years of experience. So it's not always bad to have change. You just have to know how to embrace the change and how to get everything that you can out of an associate while they're with you. The fact of the matter is that 90% of the businesses in Asheville have less than 10 people in them. With that being said, there's not a lot of growth in a lot of businesses. So as an employer, what do you do to challenge the person that's there? if they're a receptionist, after they've been with you for a year, are you giving them maybe a little bit of marketing and allowing them to keep up with your social media? Adding onto an associate's, not necessarily a promotion, but just adding responsibilities is a good way to be able to start, especially if you're a small business. You can't just expect someone to come in and stay exactly where they're at with no growth and development.
Yeah. Would you say in some ways that's maybe that's a positive thing to your perspective, but a lot of people, they don't want to take certain jobs because they don't see the growth potential. Like, I'll use an accountant. They go in, they're like, yeah, I want to be an accountant, but I want to be a partner one day, and I don't want to go in and be this staff level because I don't see the growth potential there. And there's a lot of people, I guess stereotypically from the younger generations, they want to be the boss one day. They don't want to be the employee.
Absolutely. And it's not always a bad thing. But at the same time, I also see people that have gone through that development and then they become their own boss. And then they're like, oh, this is not something I want to do. And they go back into working for the man, if you will. So it's really, again, sticking with something a little bit longer than what you would expect to be able to learn who you are as an employee and what you want out of a career.
I think what you're saying there is both sides need to invest some time and energy and give it that time to get it together and develop a relationship and develop that experience. From personal observation, after being here for 22 years and also seeing the job market, the shift I have seen is exactly what you're talking about, where I think this younger generation, I'm not going to necessarily say millennials, but there is this thing where everybody's moving around so quickly and not taking the time to really invest in that career. And then what happens in Asheville is a lot of people move here, they can't find a job, so they start their own business. And I wonder how many of those actually last past 3 years because they say, oh, I can't make money doing what I love for a business, so I'm going to just start my own. And I bet you see that a lot too.
I can't tell you, again, on a minimum, I see at least 6 new businesses a week that I've never seen before. And I've been with Express now for 4 years. That's a lot of businesses. And I cover Western Carolina. So yes. And with the investment, I always go back to 2008 when a zillion people were applying for a job and businesses would never call back. And now businesses are saying, I've asked this person to take this job and they just disappeared. They
don't even show up. I've seen that too.
But it's the reverse ghosting.
Yeah.
And I always tell both associates and clients to take something from that and realize that when someone applies to your job, that you should take the time to say, hey, thanks for applying, but we've already filled the position. Even if it's a very generic email, because at the reverse, you want that associate to call you and say, hey, I really appreciate you offering me the job, but I've actually found a position somewhere else. And if they do that, if someone takes the time to be able to say, I found a position somewhere else, you have the right, and you should as a business, to say, can you tell me what was most intriguing about this business over my business? How could I have earned you as an employee? And educate yourself for the next time that you interview someone. So I think that it's cyclical, and associates are saying, who cares if I ghost you? In 2008, you ghosted me.
Yeah.
And we've got to be able to take care of one another and know that this is something, you don't want to break up over text message anymore.
Yeah, I get it.
So in your industry, where do you see trend lines changing in the next 5 or 10 years? Do you see anything changing in what you're doing or how you're doing it?
That's a good question, but at this point, no. Even businesses are hurting so badly right now for associates that even if the economy did bust, I find it very hard to believe that businesses would start cutting people. You have businesses that are using one associate for 3 and 4 positions. The hardest part of what we're doing right now when I post a job is, what do I title it? I have someone who is setting up all travel And then they're also answering every single phone call. Well, I can't call you a receptionist because then I only get one particular type of person to apply. And I can't call you a travel person because then I don't get that person who knows how to use a phone. So titling is becoming a big issue that I see in the next few years, that it can't just be a receptionist anymore. And in the next few years, in regards to staffing, I actually see more people using staffing because they're afraid to pay payroll tax, like what you were talking about earlier, to invest in someone to all of a sudden have them leave. And so if you put them on a staffing agency and are able to have that first 90 days to kind of test each other out and then be committed, I see more companies using agencies.
Yeah, I can see that as well. And you kind of alluded to it a little bit, but how technology has affected your business in some ways. I think from what I know from my outside perspective, obviously, from the old ways that used to do in the 80s and 90s, technology, obviously, with monster.com or whatever, that's in effect.
Career Builder, LinkedIn. But going forward, how has it helped or hampered your business or the trend lines of that technology? Oh, good grief. How has technology helped our business? Well, it helps us reach a broader audience.
Yeah.
It has hindered us because I really believe that if someone walks into your business with a resume, that you shouldn't look at them and say you need to go online and apply.
Yeah,
I think that if
agree with
someone
that.
has the audacity to bring you their resume, you should automatically hire them in the technology world that we're in, that they stepped out of their home, they dressed up, they printed off a resume, and they came specifically to you to get a job. You should be jumping all over that.
That's such a unique thing that they, like, to you, that's like, I'm hiring them just for that alone.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Because they took the initiative. So are you saying initiative like that has decreased?
Oh, hands down. But it's also decreased on the company side. I can remember when I was looking for a job before Express, walking into a place, I was dressed in business clothes with a business jacket, had my resume printed on resume paper, walked in and they said, I'm sorry, you got to go apply online. and it was mind blowing to me. Well, one, I hadn't had to look for a job in 10 years, so I didn't realize that you could only apply online. But I think it takes the face out of the person that you're hiring for. And there's all these formulas now to be able to hire someone. You have to answer 100 questions for a business. And based off of how you answer those questions determines whether or not a company will call you.
Yeah.
That's how I think technology has really hindered the hiring process. It's strange to me. In Germany, it is required that you put your picture on your resume. And here in the United States, it's illegal.
Huh.
Not illegal for you to put your picture on it, but illegal for a business to ask for it. Because then that can be discrimination. And in Germany, that is not the case. You are required by every business to put your picture on there before they get your resume. It's weird, but it's just the way that it's done.
It's funny because it is such a people thing, personalities, meeting, shaking hands and all that I can see where technology is just in many aspects, but this specifically has made it so non-personal, so sanitized. You have to do it online, and you're leaving it to AI to pick your top 10 candidates, and 90% of anything is just willingness to do something.
And I always reverse it too. It's almost like the difference between a babysitter and a nanny. And it's what I tell businesses, because you as a business have kids and that business is your baby and you want to see it succeed. If you hire a babysitter to take care of your kid, all you're doing is paying them money. They're coming over for a few hours and then they're going to leave. If you're hiring a nanny, there's an investment. And I'm sorry, but I don't know any parent that would just hire a nanny based off of an application and never meeting the individual. And that's what I always talk about as a business. I mean, you need to treat that as your kid, and you want to hire a nanny, not a babysitter.
Well, in some ways, I can imagine that encourages people I mean, there's probably courses on this, on how to fluff your resume and do everything but outright lie, which is almost outright lying. And I'm sure you've probably seen that. Like,
Do you have resume tips?
Not really. I'll be honest with you, because
I would spell check.
Yeah, the simple things.
It's funny, even with spell check and the simple things of how you format, and if you're printing it on resume paper, I think it's that old additive of, are you a good test taker or not a good test taker? I think you can only take a resume with a grain of salt. You really need to get invested in the individual. That's one of the best things about a staffing agency. Even if you don't come to Express Employment Professionals, if you're going to a staffing agency, they become an advocate for you. And when they call a business, they're going to be like, John Michael, this is John over here, and you need to meet him. And I think that he would be a perfect fit for your business. He's got X, Y, and Z, but he doesn't have A, B. But who cares? You just need to meet him. Mm-hmm. And that staffing agency allows that opportunity, which kind of throws the resume out. Because let me tell you, we see some resumes that were like, are you kidding me? I can't believe that you would even think that this is an appropriate resume. Through a staffing agency, most of the time, companies aren't seeing the resume, they're hearing about the person.
And I do agree with what you're saying there, because I always looked at, when I used to be in HR, so I always looked at, does the resume at least meet the skill set that I needed? Beyond that, I wanted to meet the person and see what their personality was like, and if it fit the culture of our organization. And to me, that was something completely different that you can't read off of a resume. Mm-hmm. You can't see that person's personality and really see whether they would be a good fit for your organization.
But I get it.
So
I
get that.
I worked for a major major international airport for about 5 years, and I would get thousands of resumes. And at that point, I'm just going, are you at least formatted correctly? Do you have a cover letter? I mean, you're just asking just some simple questions, because at that point, it's just about going through the quantity.
I used to tell people that if you're applying somewhere where they're going to get a lot of resumes, then you better try to find somebody in the organization that can, give you a little bit more of a push, or personally recommend you to the hiring person. Is anybody in this circle that we know Kristy has, but has anybody in this circle used a staffing agency? John Michael, have you ever used one?
No.
I have.
You have?
Oh, yeah. When I first moved to Asheville, I was, I guess I was 21 or 22, but I worked for law firms. And so there was a staffing agency here that specialized in law firms. And so she helped me get my first, actually 2 jobs from that agency. But she was exactly like you said, an advocate for you. And she knew all the law firms in town. So she knew what the personalities were like and the cultures. And then she, did that kind of appropriate matching. But I think she did a lot more behind the scenes talking about, this candidate or that candidate.
How was your experience other than that?
It was fabulous. I have absolutely no complaints. I think it's great. I had used staffing agencies before. Back then, that was many years ago, that seemed to be the way that you got a job. And I think what technology did was put that hiring process more in the hands of the employer. That's not always been a good thing.
Correct. But I also think staffing agencies have a bad name. I mean, unfortunately, back in the 80s with particular agencies, they would charge the candidate. And
that's a little crazy.
That stipulation or that thought process is still today that agencies do that, and most agencies don't. To me, it's the perfect way as someone who's looking for a job to do it for free. I mean, all you do is go in and interview, and then you say, find me a job. This is what I want, and you're not paying the staff, or you shouldn't be. If you're paying a staffing agency some money to help for them to help you find a job, then you're with the wrong staffing agency.
Well, now I did work for a company in Boston that all they did was what you were talking about. They did headhunting for top tier executive level positions. And what I found interesting from that experience was how much the agency could fluff up a candidate.
Oh, yeah.
And I would, Some candidates surprise me. Let me just say that. I would meet them and I would say, hold up. That looked so much better on paper, sounded so much better on paper. And then others would surprise you where you would meet them and say, wow, they really are completely stellar. They matched up to everything. But I think an agency can really be your advocate.
Absolutely.
In that way.
Absolutely.
So.
Well, before we go, we mentioned it earlier and said we get back to it. And I want to make sure we get back to it. But what are some no-nos in an interview?
Where do you want me to begin? Don't wear pajamas.
Okay.
Don't bring your family.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you're speaking this from some sort of experience.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Don't eat. Do not look at your cell phone. That is the worst thing that you could possibly do.
I think that's probably the biggest thing now, isn't it?
Oh, well, you would think. We've had people bring their pets. Please don't bring your pet to a job interview. It's not appropriate. Don't bring your family to a job interview. It's not appropriate. Don't wear pajamas, like I said. It's not appropriate. Don't slouch, and be presentable. Dress for success. It doesn't matter what position that you're going to apply for. You always want to be able to dress for success. The better you look, the better you feel, and the better the interview will go.
What about from the employer? Like, what are some just frankly some questions you're not allowed to ask people?
Yes, Asheville, listen to me. You cannot ask how old someone is. You cannot ask if they are married. And I get it. It's your business. It's your baby.
Or I can imagine just kind of talking to somebody like, oh, so are you married? You have kids? And then next thing I know, I'm asking a question I'm not supposed to be asking. Just out of
that question right there. I always said any of the isms. Don't ask isms. Ageisms, genders.
But yeah, I can imagine being caught like, oh, tell me about your family. Oh, you got kids? I got kids. But you're wrong. Right?
And the best thing to do if you are an employer is to say, tell me about yourself. At that point, it is up to the individual whether they're going to tell you an employment history or a personal history, and that will tell you a lot about the individual as well.
So you can't ask age. If it's phone interview, obviously race or sex or anything like that.
Don't ask them if they have a car.
Can't ask if they have a car? Well, I mean, I guess
you can require that they have reliable transportation, but you cannot say that they have to have their own vehicle. Reliable transportation can be the bus. It can be their spouse. It can be their parents that are driving them.
What if the transportation is needed to haul stuff?
Well, at that point in time, you're saying that they have to have a driver's license, and you can do an MVR. So you're able to get around those certain questions with, do you have a valid driver's license? We're going to run a DMV check on you. So we're going to see if you can or cannot haul.
So marriage, age, sex, race. Can you say, like, do you do drugs? Is that a...
No, you have to do a drug screening.
So you say, we're going to do a drug screening, but
Correct.
You can't just say, tell me yes or no, do you do drugs? So what can you ask? I guess that maybe...
We always say stick to the job.
Yeah.
Questions related specifically to the job requirement.
Okay.
Correct.
So in other words, I think even though you think you're being nice and bantery talking to them, you could kind of put your foot in your mouth if you're just ignorant to the things. So before you hire your first hire or your 50th hire, do some research, maybe look into an employment agency.
No maybes about it.
Well,
look into an employment. Let me tell you, have it be a tool in your toolbox. Again, I would love for people to use Express, but they don't have to. You do not have to pay Express and multiple agencies in the area to have them as a tool in the toolbox. You could call me and say, hey, I'm hiring for a receptionist position. Can you send me resumes? And that won't cost you a penny.
Wow. Okay. Well, there you go, guys. And is there anything else we need to cover before we take us out? Anything you want to leave us with?
I would say go Gators.
Go Gators.
And how to contact you.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So we're on Hendersonville Road, right in between Iannucci's and Dunkin' Donuts, and across the street from Biscuit Head. It's the perfect place for an all-female staff to be in between great food. 828-654-8101 is our phone number. please feel free to give us a call at any point in time.
And can we share your email?
Absolutely.
And what is that?
Oh, it's
You want me to?
yeah, it's Kristy KRISTY.KAY at expresspros.com. So Kristy.K at expresspros.com. We would love to be able to help clients as well as associates be able to find the perfect match. And understanding that our main goal is permanent placement. Last year, we put 244 people on permanent payroll in Western Carolina, that's a large organization, company to be able to say, hey, these people went out, found a job through Express, and have now started their career.
Yeah, that's
cool.
Quite impressive. All right, well, Kristy, thank you for joining us today. And to the listeners, thank you guys for joining us. And please be sure to review this episode. For more information on who we are or this podcast, please visit www.bammit.com. That's BAMM-IT.com. And our next episode, we're going to be interviewing a brewer in the brewing industry.
The hosts and the guests of this podcast make no warranty, guarantee, or representation as to the accuracy or sufficiency of the information featured in this podcast. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. This podcast should not be considered professional advice and is for entertainment purposes. It is not guaranteed that you will find this as entertaining as the hosts find themselves.